So what's going on, guys? DIY Dan here again, and this is my new used boat. It is a 2002 Teague. Just bought it, and we got it pretty cheap because of the condition it was in. I'm just going over some tweaks and adjustments we're making to get it the way I want it to be. So one of the issues I had with this boat was the way the Bimini top was mounted, because this is stupid. I don't want to have to duck every time I want to go to the front of the boat or get up out of the captain's chair. So I remounted this Bimini top, and I'm going to show you how I did it. So let's get to it. So this Bimini top was mounted on the inside of the wake tower. We tried moving it up a little bit on the inside of the tower. However, then it would not clear the speakers to fold down. So we decided that wouldn't work. And then my wife had the good idea of putting it on the outside of the tower. So when it was in the closed position, it just rests up above the speakers. So basically we just took the screws out of the brackets holding it, and we set the Bimini top up on top of the tower, unfolded it, and right now I'm just using some zip ties to hold it in position so we can see whether this is going to work out or not. So we like the fact we could walk under it. The wakeboards are going to be way easier to put in the wakeboard racks because you don't have the Bimini top in your way. So we think this is going to work out well. So obviously these poles are too long now, so what I'm going to have to do is take these brackets off, see if I can shift them up, and mount the pivot bracket to the tower right about here. So I loosened those brackets and shifted the second rod up, then tried collapsing it, but the middle bar ended up being way too tall in the closed position. So what we're going to have to do is shorten all three rods to make them line up with each other. So I was a little nervous about messing with this Bimini top, but I know we didn't like it where it was, so we just decided to start cutting and trying it out. So I laid the main rod down where I wanted it to be in the closed position, approximated where I wanted that first pivot bracket to sit on the tower, and then cut that rod to length. Then I took that rod over to the other side, marked the other pipe, and cut that pipe as well. So I used my Sawzall to make the cuts on this pipe. However, you need to really make sure you hold these rods very firm while you're making the cut. A couple of these cuts didn't go too well, and I had to readjust with different angles, but I did get them done. So after getting those two rods cut, I put the mounting brackets and zip tied them to the wakeboard tower, so I did not permanently attach them until I'm sure it was going to work. Once I had those zip tied in place, I opened it back up, and you'll notice that the front rod is way too long, making the Bimini top not sit level in the open position. However, the back rod does sit nicely on the tower where I wanted in the closed position, and it looked good. So we did not get footage of cutting the second rod or the third rod, so I'm just going to kind of explain how I went through the process. So you saw in that previous clip, I zip tied everything before actually drilling and screwing anything permanently. So we had the main rod bracket zip tied in position. Then we proceeded to try and figure out the second rod. So to figure out the second rod, we basically slid the bracketry and held it with zip ties in different positions, then held the rod next to it by hand in the open and closed position until it looked like it sat good in both of those positions. Then we went ahead and made the cut and set that one in place. So just because the rod sits good in the closed position does not necessarily mean it's going to sit good in the open position. So make sure you try it both ways before making any cuts or mounting it permanently. So the third rod would not anchor up to that first main rod because the rods were so much shorter. So we had to do a dual pivot. And I did have to purchase another set of these mounting brackets. That was about $20 for a set of two, and I got them at West Marine in Phoenix, a boat accessory supplier. So we were trying to just see if we could leave the third rod full length and mount it at a different place on the tower. However, it would either not sit correctly in the open or closed position. And I proceeded to cut off a couple inches because I didn't want to end up cutting off too much. And I zip tied it in place and tried it. I ended up being here, realized we were getting closer, but it wouldn't either fold right or be open correctly. Then I trimmed it back again and zip tied this pivot point each time I did that and tried it on both sides. It ended up taking about 3 times, and I got this set in place. And we tried it by hand each time as well before making the cut. So now I'm just going to go over how I anchored these in position and give you some helpful tips. When you are anchoring these, I recommend using a regular screwdriver. Don't use your impact or anything like that, because these are stainless steel screws and they are like a grade 2. So they will strip out or break easily. The reason they use stainless steel is because it is the most resistant to water. So I'm going to show you how I judge what drill bit to use for what screw. And this is a little bigger screw than what's in the tower. I'm just using it for a reference to make it easier to show you guys. I set the drill bit on top of the screw, and you should not see the body of the screw. You should only see the threads sticking out past the edges of the drill bit. Again, if you go too small and you try and run these stainless steel screws in, there's a good chance you'll strip them or break them. And then you got to go through the hassle of trying to get them out, which sucks. So we had zip ties holding every bracket on this tower and used it a couple times before drilling any holes. Once we knew it was good, I would leave the zip ties in place and just drill the holes while it was being held there, then put the screws in one by one with a regular screwdriver and tried it occasionally to make sure everything was still working as we went. So I did have to use a longer bolt for this pivot, and the reason for that is when it was in the closed position, you can see it right here, it was leveraging on the bracket. So with the longer bolt, it's just barely rubbing, but it is closed all the way, so it should work without a problem. So instead of having that huge long strap on the back end, since this thing's always going to be right up on that tower, I ended up using a couple of the old straps from one of my boat covers, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut this to length. There was a button right here on the cover that allowed me to take the strap down, and then I just pulled a couple of the screws off so I could take that strap off without damaging it in case one of my ones on the front goes bad. So I cut that strap shorter and used a lighter to heat up the end so it would not start fraying. I was able to use the same strap points for the front of the Bimini top. I just had to make the adjustment for the length. Here's a good view of it in the open position, and right now I'm just going to fold it up so you can kind of see it in the down position as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and it gave you some good information. If so, hit like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And hope to see you next time. Have a good one. Later.